I just turned that off.
You look so cute today.
How does that work?
Good morning, everybody.
Deborah's the queen.
We're recording, right? Okay, we're going to, I'm going to call to order the Monday, October 16th, Planning, Energy, and Environmental Quality Committee. And I know Susan has to leave a little bit earlier today, around 11 o'clock, you said. And I'm not sure, I think Greg Mezey is going to miss today's meeting? I'm not for sure. Has anybody heard anything else?
Yeah,
Right, he might
I
be
didn't hear about
traveling.
this meeting particularly, but he said he had an 18-hour flight and it hadn't taken off yet as of about 13 hours ago.
Okay.
So he's probably in the air.
So we do have one thing to vote on, and that's, well, we have minutes, but also we have one resolution that's later in the meeting, and I don't know that they can come early. So just want to be assured that at least Randy and Veronica will be here later in the meeting to vote on that resolution. So why don't we, I think.
I may not vote for it, though, so I just wanted to give you a heads up on that, so.
Okay. And we got a different resolution. Did you see that? What, a modified one? Okay. All righty. So I don't have any changes to the agenda at this point. And do we have any public comment? Nobody here in the room? Okay. So why don't we go to minutes approval? This is September 18th, 2023, the minutes approval for this committee. Randy moves it, Veronica seconds. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Brittany. And next up, we have Kate Darfler here, the chair of the Environmental Management Committee. And she's going to give us an update about their environmental summit, I believe, or other things you folks are doing. And if you do, I'm sorry, there is one thing I'd like to add to the agenda. We have someone coming to give us a presentation regarding bird-friendly buildings. So do I need to take a vote, or can I just add that to the agenda? And I think what I was thinking is that will go right before the resolution. So that's about a 15 to 20-minute presentation. So I hope folks can stay for that.
Right before which resolution?
Right before the case resolution. So in between 10 and 11. And I see the county administrator's report is much later in the meeting. Is that okay, Norma, or do you need to go earlier? Does anybody else need to get out early? Okay. And I don't have much of a chair's report. It's more the stuff about skip the stuff update I was going to help do or facilitate. But why don't we go right to Kate Darfler, and what do you have? Yeah, welcome.
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to share my screen here as I do a presentation for you. All right, so I'm Kate Darfler. I'm the chair of the Tompkins County Environmental Management Council. It's good to see you this morning. And I'm just giving you a recap on the NYSAC, which is the New York State Association of Conservation Commissions, their conference on the environment, which the EMC planned, pulled off, and hosted back in September, and kind of give you a recap of that conference that we did. And as I said, we basically pulled off this conference for this group. The best quote of it came from Steve Otis, who's assembly member from Westchester County, and he said, "I've been attending NYSAC conferences for 30 years, and this is the best one I've ever attended." So I took that as high praise. We started planning this about in March. We had about 7 trillion quadrillion hours of volunteer hours. And it was 9 volunteer leads that kind of worked for those quadrillion hours. And then we had a numerous day of volunteers as well.
Wasn't that 7 quadrillion point?
It was 0.25. I wanted to tell it. It was very
Okay.
exact.
Good thing you kept
I
track.
rounded a little bit, but
Okay.
And the big thing is, I don't know why that slide didn't show up. There it goes. Is a big thank you to our sponsors. And we had to work a lot to get sponsors, but we had a really good show of sponsorship from the community. It made the conference cash flow positive. And we couldn't have done it without them. And a special shout out to the History Center, which came in last minute and gave us a space to house everything from, and it was a great location. And I highly recommend everyone look at that space. It was ideal for check-in for the conference, and we also got to use one of the spaces for our youth meetup as well. So the conference, you don't have to know the details, but the idea of it was local steps for a better climate future, challenges and opportunities. It was divided up into 3 days of activities. The first day was primarily focused on a virtual-only conference talks. This is where the meat of the presentations were given. Thursday and Friday were focused around field trips and our reception here in Ithaca. There's just a delay on things. There we go. For some reason, it's not moving slides. So the virtual presentations, we have 50 virtual presentations, around 200 registrants. The platform that was being used, it's hard to tell however many people came, but there were at least 30 to 40 people in each track at any given time, and there were 3 tracks running simultaneously. Throughout the course of the day, it went from 9 a.m. to 2:30 or 3 p.m. I listed out the sessions here. There are recordings available of all of these sessions. They're available on NYSAC's website. If you go to nysac.org and then click on their annual meetings tab, you can see all of those recordings. A big highlight is the fact that we had a New York State representative panel. We had Pete Harcum and Deborah Glick, both from the Senate and the Assembly, and they are each the respective chairs of their committees on environmental conservation, and they had a panel in the afternoon where they took questions from the audience for an hour over lunch, and it's well worth hearing what their big issues are kind of moving forward into the next year for them. So on Thursday and Friday, we had field trips. We had 12 different field trips across Tompkins County, and we literally went in a lot of different areas in the county. We had 60 in-person participants from across New York State. Our field trips went kind of all over the place. We were up at Marshy Gardens, Honeybee Embassy, the Cornell Botanical Gardens. We went to Lighthouse Point via e-bikes. We went to the South Hill Cidery and Learning Farm, Eco Village, 3-story farm. We went to the Bell, 2 field trips to the Bell Station Preservation, also to the Marshy Gardens and to Taganic Falls Overlook. We had another Cornell one looking at sustainable landscapes, and we had a walking tour with Ithaca reuse and significant elements. And all of this culminated with a boat ride with Discover Cayuga Lake and their floating classroom. And just giving you a few snapshots of the day. This is the field trip that went to Eco Village and 3-story farm. This is one of the field trips that went to Learning Farm and showing some photos from significant elements. Here's a group that went to Lighthouse Point, where we talked with Trees Up Tompkins and the Cayuga Bird Club, and then the group that went to the Bell Station Preservation. Here's a group that went to the Cornell Botanical Gardens, and we got to look at the highlight for me was seeing the native lawn that was recently featured in the New York Times. And lastly, here we are on the boat, Discover Cayuga Lake. We took water samples and even got to look at those water samples, and so we actually got to do some activities. And in addition, we connected with the New York State Water Resources Institute. They happened to be having their annual meeting at the same time as our conference, and it happened to be in Ithaca because that's where they're centrally located through Cornell. And so we invited them to join us on the boat and got to connect with that organization as well. Our conference reception we held at Stewart Park, which was also a great location for a conference reception, allowed for lots of flexibility and setup. The audio video was not not top notch, not like this, but was still worked out pretty well for us. And Tompkins County was the big winner of the awards that NISAC presented. The first one was on the Project of Environmental Excellence, and that was given to the town of Dryden, their Climate Smart Communities Task Force, in collaboration with the Dryden High School Sustainability Club. The Marjorie Sachs Environment Award for Environmental Leadership was given to both Brian Eden and to Bob Beck. And there's Brian with the NISAC president, Simon Skolnick. The Joy Squire Student Environmental Achievement Award was given to 3 individuals. 2 of them were Dryden High School students, McKenna Crocker and Catherine Lee, and then also to Marissa Glaze, who's from downstate. Our keynote address was given by none other than our own Anna Kellis, and she did a great job talking about kind of upcoming emerging issues and mostly focused around PFAS. And there she is with, that's also Steve Otis in the shot with Simon and myself. And essentially the next steps for the EMC, that was a big effort that we put on. We will be having a retrospective with the NISAC board, and kind of 2 pieces that are coming out of that for our team and for me was to recommend that they use some of the conference profits to hire a conference lead rather than looking for that to be done by the local EMC or CAC or local individual, and to also recommend picking a conference location 2 years in advance so we can actually better align with most county budgeting processes, because it, only knowing about it 9 months ahead of time does not allow us to kind of work within most county budgeting procedures. Also things coming up for the EMC, I'm presenting to the St. Lawrence County EMC actually on Wednesday. They're just kind of curious how we work, how we operate, and to make connections. And then we just at our last meeting last week, we unanimously, with 1 abstention, voted to send a letter to Governor Hochul to support the Water Resource Council's letter, which I believe you guys will be seeing at some point here after their meeting tonight, regarding the salt mining under Cayuga Lake and its potential sale. And I think that our letter and stuff will bring to this board so you guys can see in case there's something that this board wants to move forward up to the county legislature. And I'll work with Annie on that for your next meeting when the WRC letter will be finalized, because right now it's still in draft. And we're going to be building our membership and updating our bylaws hopefully in the next few months. That's kind of what's on our schedule. And that's all that I have. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Great, thank you, Kate. I attended as much as I could, all the virtual sessions and several of the field trips, and I learned a lot about this area and got to connect and meet with folks across the state. So thank you for doing that. Susan?
I attended virtually as well. I tried to focus mostly on water resources since I'm the liaison to the Water Resources Council. It was very helpful. I actually thought the platform was really interesting. I sometimes got startled because I would kind of wander around virtually, and then someone would pop up and say, "Oh, hi, Susan, do you need help?" And I just wanted to give a shout out to Darby because you were facilitating all the water resources. And I learned so much. I'm an English major, so that's new to me, and I really appreciated it. So thank you it was a lot of work.
Great,
You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
They used the GatherTown platform.
Yeah, GatherTown platform. It's an interesting virtual space to engage in. And one thing that we did a little differently, which we've been getting positive feedback on, was all of the presentations were only 10 minutes. So those 50 presentations are only 10-minute long presentations to do. But it forced presenters to really condense down the meat of what they wanted to present. They're only given about 10 slides, maybe 15 slides to go through, and you really have to be on target and on message to do it. And I think it was appreciated when you're going to be sitting for 8 hours, the topic is changing every 10 minutes. It's pretty easy to stay engaged that way.
Yeah, I facilitated one of the sessions, and it was a little challenging, to keep folks in that 10 minutes. But it made them, like you said, made them stick with their highlights, and it was, to me, more digestible to the audience. And there was a lot of Q&A, I think, because people could understand that.
Yeah, one takeaway would be to put more Q&A time in as an organizer, but we would have been there till 5 o'clock otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions or comments for Kate? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, applause on completing orchestrating the environmental summit. And I said to Kate a couple times through this, earlier on, I was like, so you have a template from the state, is state EMC like giving you a template to do this, and she said, no. So had to create it from scratch. So great job. So thank you, and you're welcome to stay for the other presentations. And I think what we're going to do is just do a couple minutes. We're going to do a quick update on Skip the Stuff, and then we're going to go to the two resolutions. We're going to do, let's see, Norma, do you mind if we do the other, the case board one first, and then the recycling one? Because you're going to, or I guess it's you folks too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, because we got Sarah Collada on here. She can only be on here till 11 too, but so can Susan. So we'll try and move the stuff up. I wasn't sure if Greg was going to be here. So we'll try and push the stuff up that we have to vote on. But so for Skip the Stuff, I don't know if Veronica, you wanted to say anything about that, or you want me to try and give a little update, and then we have folks here from recycling who will talk about our conversation that we had here with them.
I think you have the latest info, so
Okay.
why don't you do it?
So Skip the Stuff we've talked about a few times, and that's basically trying to see if we can have any restaurant or food establishment that gives out food to not automatically give out all the utensils and condiments that often come with them. And I'm not saying that all food establishments do that. There are some that ask you. But a lot of them, you automatically get it. And I know we've heard stories, especially where people say, I don't want that stuff, and it still appears. And so you have all this plasticware and utensils that you might not want. And so we were trying to figure out, so we had folks from Zero Waste, which is a local part of a bigger organization, that came and talked to us of, could we pass a local law, or could we do something? Some other municipalities are starting to do something. And so some municipalities, they have it as part of their, what they call the hygiene law, through a health department. And it just doesn't look like we can do that here. So anyway, so had a brief conversation with Leo and Kat from Recycling Materials Management. And so I don't know if you guys wanted to say a little bit about that.
Yeah, we can throw some things out. Let's see. So I think what makes sense to our department, and we haven't talked about it or really laid out any kind of a plan to approach this, but we certainly were impressed with the presentation from Zero Waste. It got our attention. It makes sense, and I think we certainly want to back the initiative. I'll let Kat, maybe certainly comment on to it, but I think what we would suggest that we would plan out, a pilot or a trial kind of a period and solicit a couple of restaurants to just get a better understanding of any kind of challenges or barriers to the restaurants. It makes sense from a consumer or someone purchasing takeout food, but I think we'd really like to hear from the restaurants just to get a good understanding of anything that may come about. As an example of that, we have, I think, Ithaca to go, so there's, I believe, and again, I don't have a good understanding of it, but I think quite often you would order through their software.
Right.
So there's a few layers of how one would order and either opt in or opt out of getting this additional stuff. So that's an example. And we have worked with many restaurants on different projects, whether it's recycling, incorporating food scraps, recycling. We worked with restaurants with, what was the program? It was on the
Lean Path.
Lean Path program.
That's
so-
Lean, L-E-A-N.
Lean
Lean
Path,
Path.
yes. And that was a program that they used some specific software to manage their calculating their waste, gathering data, and then that software calculated the expense of the waste, therefore really generating some positive things for the restaurants. There are some things in it for the restaurants with savings, cost savings, and I think if it's rolled out the right way, it could definitely be a successful program. Want to add anything, Kat?
Sure. I'll just add that I think it would be fit really well within our Rebusiness Partners program, that pilot that Leo's talking about, where we already provide technical support to restaurants, to businesses in Tompkins County. It is aligned with some of the sentiment that's in our solid waste management plan. We had kind of alluded to it as skip the straw, but I think this kind of pilot is definitely well in line with that, and it's really taking a look at kind of where it fits, but being able to work with those restaurants to understand, restaurants and food businesses, I should say, because I think it could be more than just straight restaurants, but understanding, you know, what type of parameters. I understand that there's multiple pieces of legislation out there that kind of have different parameters in them, so being able to hear from the restaurants if there's any challenges with particular parameters, so that we also have a better understanding of how we can help them work through any challenges that might be proposed and make sure that there aren't barriers with something that might be moving forward.
Right. The Zero Waste sent us a couple weeks ago, too. There's a Westchester law where it's, I want to say, less strict, but there's Beyond the Plastics model legislation, which is more strict. So, for instance, you can't even, if something like that was adopted, or we went with, that it would be, you can't give out plastic utensils at all. It would be more like the compostable forks, wooden forks, those type of thing, or whatever else currently actually composts. I think this is the type of thing that we just initially had a conversation, so it's something that will continue. I don't think there's nothing set in stone at this point. Veronica?
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for sharing your perspectives, recycling folks. This is exciting. I wanted to say, in terms of checking in with businesses, I spoke to someone from the Tompkins Chamber who said that they would be up for helping us get in touch with businesses or food. I think they have they said they have a hospitality businesses list or something, which is presumably doesn't all include food and doesn't include all the food businesses. So we haven't done anything through there, but we're thinking up questions on a survey we could send out to businesses, and it seems like that effort and your efforts could be combined. I guess let's talk out of the meeting is what I'm saying, but that was an avenue we were starting to explore to get that kind of input and feedback and collaboration from the businesses themselves.
Yeah, the chamber has been mentioned just in our conversations. We've rolled out programs in the past through the chamber, and it's a good fit, no doubt.
Okay, thank you. So why don't we, Randy?
Yeah, thank you. I think you're right. Technology is where you're going to be able to find solutions and find the data. There's a lot of data in barcode information on every package. They know exactly how much packaging and what that packaging is made of. So I think that's really your technology is going to be helpful for that. So.
Thank you. So if you guys can just pause there for a second, we're gonna move the schedule around a little bit. So why don't we have Sarah Coulada here from, she's the chair of the CASE Board, the Climate and Sustainable Energy Board. And so I had a couple conversations with her. We have a modified resolution that's in front of you that's different than the one in the packet. So first, before we begin this, would someone be interested in moving this one? And even though it says the CASE Board, I would like to move it as something from Peak. Would someone like to move that and get it on the floor? Do you have a question first, or?
You just answered it.
Okay. Would someone like to move this resolution? Susan? Seconded by anybody? Veronica? Okay, so again, Sarah did a ton of work trying to coordinate with the other groups. As you might remember, when we had folks from Clean come here last month, I said I would really want it, if they hadn't asked for us, I would really like to have it come from Water Resources Council or one of the lake groups. And so timing-wise, it's not all quite working out with the timeline that the urgency that the groups would like to have us pass something or to consider something. And again, I'm gonna pass this right over to Sarah to kind of summarize all the coordination that she really took on to try and organize the groups. And I know we have Darby Kiley also trying to help with this. So Sarah, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Thanks for moving the agenda around so that I could present this earlier rather than later. I've got a mandatory 11 o'clock work meeting. So to get a little more specific about the organizations that are aligned with the intention of this resolution, we've been in touch with the Cayuga Watershed Intermunicipal organization led by Liz Thomas. They, on September 27th, passed a much more detailed resolution, which they're in the process of sending out to the governor, to elected officials, and a number of state agency staff people. So this is in alignment with that, but a little bit more targeted and focused. That organization is made up of 39 municipalities around the lake, I think 6 different counties. Then have met with Cynthia Brock, Tompkins County Water Resources Council. That's a group that's made up of a number of professionals, subject matter expertise, experts on water. So they will be meeting this afternoon, and their focus is identifying the many detailed questions that they feel the state should be answering regarding, and I guess really what we should do is we should pause and say what's going on is that Cargill Corporation, which is a huge privately held organization that, builds railroads across the Amazon, does all kinds of big agriculture around the world, owns this salt mine and now intends to sell it. And they do not have a good reputation for environmental transparency. They have a reputation for saying they'll do things and then dragging their feet to do them. So we feel that the lake is at risk. So put that out there, and then I'm going to go through the resolution quickly. Also, as you heard from Kate, the Environmental Management Council has a letter that reinforces the questions that the Water Resources Council is bringing up. And then finally, Cayuga Lake Watershed Network, Liz Kretinger, has been in the loop as well. So you've basically got 5 organizations that are focused on environmental quality that are really concerned about this. And this is why. This lake supports 100,000 people's daily drinking water. A lot of the county, as well as other nearby municipalities, and a big part of our economy is tourism and people coming to enjoy the lake. To have that lake turn into something salty and undrinkable, unswimmable, and with impacts on the environment and the ecosystem is not a good thing. There's never been an environmental impact statement on that mine, and it's a huge mine, and there's a lot of geology. You heard about it last month, so we're not going into that in this resolution, but basically all the criteria that should trigger an EIS are present. There has been a failure in New York State of a salt mine. The scope would be big, and the lake is a vital natural resource. So basically what we've honed this down to is asking New York State for a full environmental review, including an end-of-life plan in what's required in order for the mine to be sold, for the end of life for the part that's under the mine, and finally having a substantial and sufficient bond posted. We're proposing $1 billion, but that can be established by an independent natural resource economist to ensure that there is funding. And when we're not caught as a county, as municipalities, we're not caught holding the financial impact of a disaster that could happen. And we certainly know that natural disasters are real. So I wanted to just share that. Let's see, how do I stop screen sharing now? Where's my little control button? Wanted to give you that background, and happy to take questions. Let's see how. Or maybe I never was sharing. I just thought I was sharing. Okay.
Oh, right. Yeah, you weren't sharing, but we were following along on the resolution.
Great.
So I'll just reiterate, when we get to the resolved, number 13 is asking the governor and the DEC to do an independent review of the mine's operations, assessing long-term potential impact on a valuable publicly owned natural resource, which is the lake. And number 14, resolve further that is required by the Mine Land Reclamation Law, but not yet required by Cargill by the DEC. An end-of-life plan must be required and approved by DEC to address the safe closure of the portion of the mine beneath the lake to mitigate the potential impact of the mine's operation on the lake's water quality. And the last resolved is that Cargill or a future buyer be required to post $1 billion or a value to be established by an independent natural resource economist, environmental bond with New York State to ensure the availability of adequate funding to implement said end-of-life plan and to compensate both private and public entities for any natural resource damage claims. And I would like to add a couple of things. I was wondering on number 13, where it says resolve therefore, I would like to put in that the Tompkins County Legislature strongly urges, and then go back into the governor. So is that friendly? Because that brings it to a...
Sounds good.
That makes it into a resolution from this legislature. And then I would like to add a 16th resolved, and that is kind of like our standard one. Further resolve that a copy of this resolution shall be forwarded to relevant local and state officials and organizations. And I could, if this passes, I could detail those and add those at the legislature meeting. Is that one also friendly? Okay, any questions, comments from folks? Randy?
Thank you for reducing the number of whereases, because I got lost halfway through them, so appreciate that. The number 11 whereas I'm struggling with. And it says, whereas it is almost certain that the mine will someday fill the water, I'd like to propose, whereas the mine may fill the water, a study is needed. So, I mean, I don't know if it's going to fill with water or not, but it might, and it's a concern without a doubt, but almost certain.
Yeah, I think the question is time frame. I mean, over 1,000 years, it will, because that is the geology. The pressure of air is less than the pressure of water.
Yeah, I agree.
And so
I
eventual collapse is likely, but we don't know when.
Yeah, I agree with that. It just, for me, it's just too much for being on that one. And then on the number 15 resolved, that Cargill or a future may be required to post a $1 billion bond. I see you added or a value to be established by an independent natural resource economist. I'm not comfortable with even putting a number on that of $1 billion. I agree that there should be a bond established, but I think that should be just done by this independent natural resource economist or other engineers. It's going to be, I would imagine just doing this assessment is going to be millions of dollars to go through this, and I think Cargill should be responsible for that, or whoever the owner is. But I'm just not comfortable putting a dollar number on it. So.
Thanks, Randy. Other comments? I think was it the original resolution, was it 10 billion? I'm comfortable myself with $1 billion, and that's, as folks know, that's an assurity. It doesn't mean they post $1 billion. It's like insurance. When any organization, like say even now solar panels, most places that put in solar panels or wind farms, they have to post enough to deconstruct or some environmental damage. And if the lake was salinated, and it's not just salinated, we don't know all the chemicals that are stored in the salt mines. So, and we don't know the ones that are left there and in the mines that they're not using anymore. So there's also that potential, not just salt, but chemicals that could be, toxic chemicals that could be released into the lake. And if we just took out, I think it's 100,000 people that are using the lake for their drinking water. So just trying to figure out how are those 100,000 people going to get water? What are we going to, all the businesses that rely, on this tourism, all the marinas and other, the people, trying to figure out what's going to happen to this area if the lake is salinated. And so there's also some evidence that Seneca Lake and Cayuga Lake are attached underwater too. So what could that do? I mean, we just don't know. So I'd like to hear what other folks think. If you have any opinions, if you don't, that's okay. But so you said about the 1 billion, and then the other one is about number 11. You would prefer it, say, may fill with water.
Right.
Veronica?
I don't have an opinion on the monetary value other than I'm in favor of trusting the expertise of the multiple boards that sent us their way, but I haven't read all the resolutions in detail. I would prefer, for number 11, I'd prefer the language of, like, it is almost certain that the mine will someday fill with water, or something like that has the same content. I think Sarah explained it, and actually, so I got to read earlier, Brian Eden wrote up a little response to this kind of line of questioning, which I just forwarded to you, Randy. Sorry, it's long, but it's a longer thing of what Sarah said, that like there's just, because of the density differences in rock and water and air and the pressure differences that result, which are like magnified by being under a significant depth of you know, whatever it is, rock, water, air in the structure, and the fact that like there's subsidence and things are just at least a little bit dynamic, that the cavern is basically guaranteed to fill with water, but the time frame is unknown. And so I think I'm glad that the whereas says that. So I like it as is.
So Veronica, you're okay with it is almost certain, okay? Susan?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with both of these, and this was discussed at the Water Resources Council. They came and did a presentation last month, which was the same day as the
Clean did.
Yeah,
right.
and yeah, there was quite a lot of discussion about, and questions asked along the lines of what you're asking, Randy. I'm very comfortable with this after that extensive discussion with the people on the Water Resources Council and the Clean people.
And so what I'm hoping from today, so Water Resources Council, they meet later today. So I'm explaining, like, timing-wise, not everything lines up. But so this, if we pass this today, this, you know, we're going to hear some feedback, you know, from the Water Resources Council. I'm going to attend that meeting later today, and you, Susan, you're attending, and Darby's attending. So there's several of us attending to hear what they're having to say. And timing-wise with legislature meetings, we have 3 more weeks before this would come on the legislature meeting for us to consider it. So we're going to have time for some more, you know, some more discussion and more questions and answers. And like Veronica said, Brian sent out some stuff, so we'll have, you know, more time to digest that. So I'm hoping we can move something forward, you know, just so that we'll have it on the agenda. So I don't see at this point, but that's something you could move. It doesn't seem like we have the other 3 of us have an appetite to make those changes, but we'll have another time, you know, another opportunity to make those changes if you want to try to do that. Any other comments before we vote on this? Veronica?
Yeah, just some small things. The change that you made in the resolve number 13 of adding that the Tompkins County Legislature strongly urges, should we have something along those lines? I forget what standard language in resolves 14 and 15, because as written, they both one resolves that an end-of-life plan must be required, and one resolves that Cargill or a future buyer be required to post the bond. And we can't really do that, but we can urge the authority in question, which is the DEC in the first case, and I don't know in the second, to determine that, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think that through. Sarah, I don't know if you have any input there, but trying to change the wording here to who would require this. So number 14, further that is required by but not yet required of Cooperative.
I think it makes sense that Tompkins County urges be put into each of those. As case, we have even less, you know, jurisdiction over the issue, so we just left it more open. And then I think Veronica's pointing out a good gap in that between now and the legislature meeting, we could try to identify which state agency would be charged with requiring posting of a bond. I'm guessing it would be DEC, but we can certainly do that research, Annie, and get back to you to confirm if it's that entity or if it's the Department of State or some other, so that, you know, it's more specific as to who has responsibility to respond to this. And that could help also with the list of who it gets sent to.
Okay, that would be helpful. And do you think we need in each of those anything else for right now?
No.
Okay. So are we okay with just adding in the number 13 that the Tompkins County Legislature strongly urges? And then we'll see for the other ones who were, because I wasn't sure, like, are we urging like Veronica pointed out, are we urging the DEC? Are we urging Cargill? So we'll get more information and get that clarified and bring that up at, we can bring it up at WRC if they have any advice for us. So all good points. Anything else?
And then one more thing, I guess, two more things. Is our version going to need these numbers taken out, like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Yeah, we'll have.
Like them, but our resolutions never have them.
I know. We'll have to, so I'll have to work with, Brittany will help us and let us know if you need help. We'll have to reformat this. Yep.
Sounds good.
And one thing that Terry Carroll at Department of Planning and Sustainability said is that another option would be to create a short cover memo to the resolution. So if it's not protocol to include statistics like those 1, 2, and 3 in the resolution, then we could help you, Annie, draft a memo that would summarize the motivation for this, but would not be embedded in the resolution.
Okay, yeah.
So a cover memo that goes out with it.
Okay, and we can talk if there's certain things, legislators want taken out of here as far as factual information. That's what you're saying, but included in a memo. But not, okay, so we can talk offline about that and then work on that. Does that sound good?
That sounds good. And for what it's worth, Sarah, that's having a memo with a resolution is also a pretty typical thing that comes along with resolutions from our departments. So it wouldn't be weird.
Good, great.
Right.
My last little thing is in whereas number 6, it says, whereas safety concerns are founded on the collapse of the Retzoff mine in Livingston County, New York in 1994, and the salinization that county's lower aquifer as a result. Is that missing a word, or am I just failing to read? I'm not parsing that.
It does look, it does look like in shortening the Quio text, we left something out there, or I think it should be, and the resulting salinization of the county's lower aquifer, comma, and.
Okay, thank you, that helps. I guess I'd move to make that change then,
Okay.
change it to, and the resulting salination of that county's lower aquifer as a result.
Take out as a result, because we would have resulting in the salinization.
Right, so 1994, and the resulting salinization of that county's lower aquifer, comma, and.
Is that okay with everybody? That's friendly. Okay. Anything else before we vote? Sorry to push you guys. We got 10 more minutes. We got to do another resolution. Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, that passes 3-1. Thank you, everybody. And thank you very much, Sarah. And I will just say really quick, I appreciate all the work you did on this, Sarah, and your board, and all the other boards that have been working on this and will continue to work on this. And one of the things that I did say to Sarah was, well, really, Case Board would be the last board that I'd want to have come to us. I really wanted one of the water, I don't want to say water boards, but anyway, one of the boards that is concerned about water in the lakes. But timing-wise, trying to pull this all together, I'm really happy that we're, getting to get something, before peak. So thank you again very much. All righty.
Thank you.
And so why don't we go to the next resolution, which is from the Department of Recycling and Materials Management. And I know Norma Administration has also been working on this. And we have 3 folks here. We have Leo Jeremy and Kat. So who's going to be talking about this one?
I guess I can start it off.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me just put it on the floor. This is the solid waste annual fee resolution, doc ID 11979. It's packet page 6. Could somebody move that? Randy moves it, seconded by Susan. Okay, it's on the floor. Go ahead, Leo.
Okay, so this resolution mirrors what we do every year at this time of year as we set the unit fee. The unit fee this year is staying the same at $80 per ton. I'm sorry, $80 per unit. I have to stop saying that, per ton. $80 per unit, so there's no change in that. The only change is listed in D on the second page that references the college and schools. So I think, as everyone knows, we've been tasked with modifying how that's calculated, and this is what we are proposing. We are proposing to calculate it by student enrollment. We had gotten our student enrollment numbers using a website for the National Center for Education Statistics. The website is actually, let me get it up here, IPEDS, IPEDS. So that's where we're obtaining the student enrollment numbers. We're using 5 students per unit on a full-time basis, and then we're using 7.5 students for TC3, taking in consideration their large number of part-time students. You can see where we have the breakdown for Cornell, Ithaca, TC3. BOCES is calculated the same as it has been in the past, just because I believe we feel we need more discussion on how we will be charging BOCES in the schools. So that stays the same as what we've done in the past.
Okay. And I'll get to you in a second, Nora. And Susan, you have to leave right at 11, is that correct?
I could go to probably like 10 after if I have to.
Okay, just want to make sure you have an opportunity to vote. Okay, Norma?
Yeah, I just want to quickly add to what Leo just said. And the determination to use 5 students and 7.5 students per unit was based on way back last year when we started talking about the percentage that the colleges should be contributing, the distribution of contributions between what residents, commercial, and colleges were providing. Way back, they used to pay about 11% of the total cost for recycling waste management, and that percentage, of course, we've talked about this several times, dropped below 10%. So what Leo did was he looked at what the current need is for the organization and determined that 5 students per unit actually gets them back up to that 11 to 12% contribution to stabilize it. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that that's the reason why the students per unit was set the way they are.
Randy?
In our budget discussions, we had talked about increasing the residential fee from $80 to $85. Does this not do that? It keeps it at 80, or?
That's correct. It does not do that. We're keeping it at 80. Yep.
Okay. So thank you for that. How does the budget for your department work? So is that presented to administration, or is it presented to this committee? I don't think I've seen a budget for next year. Maybe it's come across my desk. I haven't seen it, but
The budget is in the budget book.
oh, okay. I didn't look for it.
But because it's an enterprise fund, that's very it's uncommon that they would come to us for any kind of over-target requests. So this is the time where the legislature, this is really the part that the legislature has the most input on, is what we can charge for fees and the approval of those fees.
So when reviewing the budget, is that the responsibility of this department to understand the processes and steps you're taking So I'm trying to understand the role of this committee is to understand these are all the initiatives you're doing, this is what's going on, this is money you're putting towards things, or is that an administration issue? So I'm just curious.
Yeah. Short answer is yes. But no, so that's what the committee, or the department comes to this committee all year long, kind of
Right.
keeping you apprised of the types of activities that they are undertaking. But we look at it from a budget perspective in county administration. And of course, Leo and I, we talk at least every couple of weeks, so.
And maybe later on, month or two or three, we could kind of go through what you're doing and what the money's being spent, and I'd like to be educated on that. You came up with 5 students per unit. Now that seems like a bargain to me for the colleges. So they shouldn't be upset by that, because what's the average, was it 2.5 people per household?
Yeah, I think the latest census was 2.14 persons per unit or household, yes.
And they're getting the benefit of 5.
Correct. And initially, we were looking at 4 students,
Right.
and previously, but we felt as though we really wanted to keep the percent of the total solid waste annual fee closer to 11-12%.
If I could chime in, some of those students, though, live off campus.
They do.
Right. So I think part of the college's argument was, well, they're paying off campus, but they're spending a lot of time on campus, and some of them live on campus is part of the factoring in.
Thank you.
And a lot of them are eating on campus, which creates a lot of waste.
And it looks like TC3's increase is very similar to what, percentage-wise, what the other colleges are paying. So we're sharing in that pain, the county is itself, so makes sense.
Veronica?
Yeah, I had the same question as Randy, as the good heavens, sorry, about the $80 versus $85. And so I looked in the budget book and see that it still says the fee is going to be $85. So is that something that is going to get changed if this resolution passes through the full legislature as is? And does that change our budget numbers in some way?
No. You want to answer? You want me to?
Well, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so when we started this, we weren't sure, because we were still going through quite a bit of the process. So whether we were going to have to, whether the solid waste was going to have to charge $85 to meet their expenses for the year. But with the current scenario that that the department's brought forward to you, at $80 they can sustain their budget and be able to do businesses and still be able to maintain their fund balance.
Right.
Am I right?
Right, yep. Yeah, that's the other thing that we look at, and we look at that a few years out as well, projecting out to maintain fund balance. Projected fund balance at the end of next year, I believe 17%. We're required to keep 16.
Awesome. Congratulations and thank you. Similar question, the EFG in this sheet, the fees per square foot. I guess I noticed in the budget book, those also reflected a small raise. So that's going to be changing too. Actually, it was a small raise times 100, because it's listed as more like $3 to $6 per square foot. Surely that's not. Okay.
Well, it's not necessarily an increase. We get our numbers from Jay at assessment. So the increase ultimately, I believe, equates to $52,000 for other categories in the solid waste annual fee. So that could be additional residential units that have been added over the course of the year, new buildings with square footage, or additions to buildings with square footage. So so they're not getting increased any higher, it's just additional revenue from new residents or buildings.
I think maybe either I'm confused or not clear. I'm looking at I'm not looking at an amount of money we'd be getting from the fee. I'm looking at in the budget book, in the appendix, it's the schedule of fees. The lines say, for example, solid waste annual fee, other annual fee, $6.30. And then it says SWOTR, which I assume is shorthand for other, per square foot per unit. So that has nothing to do with how many square feet are calculated in this, right? It's just a fee per square foot that we're setting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and in the book, it says $6.30. Here, it says like $5.93.
I think that will be adjusted when the budget gets adjusted based on going back to 80 versus.
It was preliminary, yeah. So this
Okay.
was the requested budget book, and now it's going to be, the adopted will change.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
thanks for
So
asking.
now with this, colleges and schools being calculated this way, when the unit fee goes up or down, that it gets adjusted for everybody in how they pay. Residential units, colleges, universities, commercial properties, and, yep.
So we won't be out of sync like we were for so long.
If one gets increased or decreased, they all follow suit.
Because we didn't have that method before. Okay, everybody all set? Okay, well, thank you for the presentation. All those in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work on that. And just looking at, we have quite a few things going on. We have, I think, some short updates, and then we'll have, so we have trails, debris, ag conservation, building code. So, and then we also have some folks here, which that are going to be talking about bird-friendly buildings. Again, that's not on the schedule, but that'll be after our 4 discussions. And if you folks want to come up to the table just to get ready for later, you'll be after that, and then we'll have about a 20-minute presentation on that. And I also, if you guys get a chance while we're having some other presentations, I wanted to hook the bird-friendly, Adam and the bird-friendly folks up with Kate Darfler. That's our EMC chair back there. That's here. So if you guys can get hooked up and see what you can do maybe for getting information out to municipalities. All right, so next is the up. Did we miss something?
We did have a couple of department updates. I didn't know when you wanted us to do those.
Apologize, go ahead.
Okay, and we won't be long.
Yeah, we got like 30 seconds, so go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to make mention, we have engineering bid that's on the street right now for our engineering services. We expect that bid in on the 23rd, so that's something we'll be bringing to you next month, a recommendation for that company. We are interviewing this week for the deputy director position, and I wanted to bring that to your attention. And November 15th is America Recycles Day, and we're in the plans of doing something for that, and we'd like to plan something with along the lines of tours at our facility. So we'll get more information out to you as we get that plan together.
Right.
I want to apologize too. We had made a decision to discontinue using compostable bags in our 2024 budget. And as we got to the point where we needed to reorder those bags for this year, we decided to discontinue or start getting the messaging out this year. I apologize for not bringing that to your attention last month, but if Jeremy could just speak real quickly to what we've done to plan that out.
Thanks, Leo. I'll try to be really brief. Rationale for this was there are environmental benefits to not providing so many compostable liners. We're letting the public know that they're welcome to procure their own as long as they're BPI certified. but that there are plenty of other options for cleanly and conveniently collecting food scraps at home. Lining a bin with a newspaper is free, easy, and reduces, the resources consumed to, make food scrap collection easy. We announced it October 1st, and we'll stop giving out compostable liners as of November 1st. We have a lot of great communication efforts underway thanks to our communications coordinator, Kate. And we've been giving out like tip sheets and, social media posts. And we also got some coverage from the Ithaca Voice. Also, our drop spot consultants have been really helpful getting the message out to participants. We've gotten a handful of complaints, but most of the response has been understanding, and we're optimistic about moving forward. We're going to keep a close eye on participation data to make sure that this the program keeps sustaining and growing, and what effect this may have.
Thank you. I know after I read what county legislature and local municipalities have been doing, I then recycle that newspaper in the bottom of my compost bin, and that does work to help absorb a lot of the liquids and have everything kind of, you still have to wipe it out, but that newspaper does work a lot, work pretty well. So thank you for that update. Any questions? All right, thank you folks very much. And sorry, I forgot to ask about updates. And so then we're going to have our discussions. The county so again, we're going to have our 4 quick discussions, county administrator's report, and then we're going to have the bird-friendly buildings presentation for about our last 20 minutes, hopefully. So that'll be about 11:40 we're going to shoot for. So thank you for everybody's patience. Okay, Haley, what do you got for us? Or Abigail, sorry. Abigail, you have update on ag conservation, so we don't have anything in the agenda for that?
Yes, so this is just a brief update for you all on my annual monitoring. So this is for the Tompkins County Conservation easements and the riparian buffers. So I'm just going to walk you through some details on what we do hold and then outcomes of my annual monitoring. So for county conservation easements, we have 3. These are ag conservation easements. We have 3 that are co-held with the town of Dryden. That's a total of 852 acres. 1 co-held with the town of Lansing. That's 905 acres. And 1 held solely by the county in the town of Lansing. That one has been subdivided to its maximum allowment of 3 subdivisions. So there are 3 owners, but at a total of 377 acres. For our riparian buffers, there are 2 in the town of Caroline. That's 4 acres total. 1 in the town of Danby. That's a total of a half an acre across 2 adjoining lots. 1 in the town of Enfield, 2.26 acres, and 1 in the town of Lansing, that's 8.59 acres. So that's the coverage of those 2 separate programs, just so you know what the county holds. And for the annual visits, so on an annual basis, I do outreach to owners and do those visits. I coordinate those with town planners, soil and water, and the NRCS. I prepare materials for those. So those are maps that we now have virtually. I have it on my phone. It's called ArcGIS. It's really helpful, the field maps. So that does offline data, so I can see all the points on the boundaries of those properties. So that is the requirement of the conservation easement, is that annually I need to walk a portion of the boundaries of those properties to ensure that they're still in compliance with what the county holds. So that has been really helpful in the last 2 years. And in 2024, we are working with communications. I've spoken briefly about this with Rob to look at testing the drone capabilities of that management. I think it will be helpful as we think about conservation easements as a whole and a good planning exercise to help some of our partners that are continuing some of this work to see if the goal is to have the drone try to do the work, have me do the work that I have done and see who did a better job, who has holes where, and if possibly we can maybe shorten some of that load. It does take a significant amount of time, so that, you know, maybe the drone does a portion of the work and sees the spots that maybe someone needs to go in and check on. So that's exciting. And then how that closes out is there are monitoring maps and reports created, reviewed by the attorney. Those are filed, and a follow-up letter about that visit is sent to the landowners. And happy to report that there were no violations this year. Are there any questions on that? I know that was quick.
Any questions? What do you do if there is a violation, and just like a typical violation? What?
So it is very well outlined in our documents, in the easement, as well as in the monitoring directions of what happens. That goes through the attorney. The attorney will follow up with the landowner.
Okay, so it goes.
Depends on the violation, if it's something they can take care of or if the county needs to take action. It depends. We have not, thankfully, been in a situation since holding those conservation easements where that is the case. We have, in some places, when they reach out and ask for something, gone through, we're in a couple of those at the moment, gone through some processes with the attorney to tell them what they may or may not do, which is part of that conservation easement. We have one who requested a pond in a certain location. He's been told where he can have that pond.
Okay.
They have to go through a very specific process with
So
us.
if they're saying, hey, well, I want to be able to access a certain part, how would I do that? Or I want to put a pond here, then they figure that out. You figure that out together.
Yeah, so I think one of the benefits of the conservation easement is for the tillable land. Traditionally, they have full right and access to farm that. It's for major changes that changes.
All right, thank you very much. See, and then we have update on the debris management plan. Are you doing that too, Abigail?
Yeah, that one's me as well. So our debris management plan comes out of the resiliency and recovery plan, which was the larger umbrella plan, which was adopted in July of 2022. So this is looking at the debris management plan is my key initiative for the year. So I just wanted to give you folks a little bit of an update about what's happening there. So the plan could come off the shelf and be used right now if necessary. In my conversations with emergency response and recycling, there are some opportunities for some drill down data specifically for the county that I think could make it much more usable for those folks, because it will heavily rely on emergency response and recycling and waste management. And one of the bigger pieces is when, looking at Caswell being now solar at that site. That was originally our main idea for the county's debris to go there. At Caswell, it has the sluicing and has all of those things. It's a very good setup for that. So I think there was some initial concern as we thought about that it was important to take a look at this now, as we know that is no longer most likely going to be an option. Happy to report that I've looked through the data, there are other options throughout the county, working with recycling and waste management and emergency response to locate a few across the county to ensure that, say, a disaster happens in the southern part of the county, that we can access points across for that debris to be taken care of. And I'm working with municipalities now, too, to understand their needs and help them find their own, to really nail down a specific debris management site so that they know that they can do the work on a local level if the county has a larger priority to take care of and things like that. So a lot of work happening there, some great stuff, coordination with emergency response and recycling and waste management still to come as well. But the other big part too is looking at there's a task force that is typically associated with a debris management plan, and I've been working on making sure we understand what that means for county employees and county titles. And once emergency response and recycling and waste management and our department feels confident about who those folks are, part of that before the end of the year is having some of those conversations with those folks to ensure that they know that they have a role if we have to implement this plan. So all exciting, and I think the goal too by the end of the year is thinking about what are the needs as we look at this on an annual, like what reminders need to go out on an annual level of like, don't forget that this is your job if this plan needs to go into action, and what pieces we need to look at on an annual basis. So more to come. I'll update you again once more before the year is out, but just wanted to give you a heads up of what's happening there.
Thank you. Any questions? I had one question. So can you go through the whole, no, just kidding. So just to reiterate, like the types of things that could precipitate having to enact this plan. So, you know, I know years ago, was it 1989, we had microbursts come through here. I know because I remember I had just bought my first house and there was microbursts that came through, like little tornadoes that came through the area. There's, you know, so there could be actual tornadoes, floods, anything else that I'm missing?
The plan is specifically built out looking at the 1% chance special flood hazards, because that is in our hazard mitigation plan listed as our highest hazard in the county. But I think the real benefit of this debris management plan is it has a ton of annexes with MOUs and, you know, all the things needed for this that municipalities can adopt if they need this on like a more localized level, and it can be used. It's very flexible. I think the good thing about it being for our highest hazard is that is our highest concern, so it can be used at those lower levels as well.
Well, thank you. And if we need to implement it, it'll be really important if there is some, you know, disaster, you know, first trying to, you know, clear areas so you can access different areas and then restore utilities if needed and so on down the line. So thank you for working on this and coordinating with all the different departments. Randy?
So this is just primarily focused on environmental problems that we may have. It doesn't include like an oil spill, those kinds of things. This is only like flooding, that kind of stuff.
So a bunch of that stuff is covered by emergency response already, those kinds of localized things in the DEC, but this is specifically for if we had a major issue with debris, specifically looking at if it was impacting travel. So to make sure that the county is still able to run.
I don't know if anybody knew this, but there was actually a train derailed along Cuga Lake a month ago, 2 months ago, and nobody knew anything about it.
Really?
And there was a small spill, but because it was private, I guess it didn't require to be DC contact. So I just wanted to share. I don't know if that's right or not, but I know that a train did derail on its way along the lake. So I just wanted to share that. So it wasn't a major derailment, but it did derail.
Dang. No, I hadn't heard about that. All right, anything else, Abigail, that you wanted to talk to us about today?
That's all for me.
Thank you very much. And Darby, I think you're up. We have, this is on packet page 12 it starts. It's the Tompkins Priority Trails Strategy 2023 update. And you have the next two things on our list, I believe.
Going to keep covering every topic possible today. So kicking off this part with the trail strategy. It's about a 20-page document. It is included in the packet. I'm not going to do a presentation on it. So this is an update from an original 2014 version. And we have a group called the Parks and Trails Network that meets about twice annually. And it's mostly an information sharing group. They talk about funding opportunities and different projects going on. And since the 2014 document was about getting onto a decade old, we talked about updating it. And so what the trail strategy does is it lists these priority trails, which is like, how do we decide what's a priority trail? It bases those on some documents from the 90s, the 1990s, the Greenways Trail and another trail corridor study that tried to look at what are the multi-use trail system that could connect the county, and looking at how, you bring in different areas and using mostly the old railroad lines to do that, to come into the city and out again. And so we've kind of kept this list of priority trails, those being multi-use. You will see the Finger Lakes Trail is mentioned in here. That's the only foot traffic only trail, but it is very regionally significant, going, over 1,000 miles and connecting that southern part of the county. And so the focus on this document is noting the updates that have been done. When the 2014 version came out, the Cuga Waterfront Trail wasn't even complete yet, which seems like that was forever ago now for those of us who use it. And even the Black Diamond Trail was not complete at that time. So now we're looking at, and there's my colleague Fernando, who has been helping work on this. So Fernando and I have spent a good bit of time looking at what are the priority trails and then what are the actions to complete those. So you'll see it focuses on 5 different priority trails: the Dryden Rail Trail, the Black Diamond Trail going north from its current endpoint up to the village of Trumansburg, and then the southern route through the city and connecting to the state parks on the southern end of the county. I don't have this in front of me right now, but what are my other 5 things that it goes through? Dryden Rail Trail, the urban connectors, and then what am I missing? Oh, the South Hill Recway extension. So right now, South Hill Recway ends at Burns Road, and the 4 towns involved, towns of Ithaca, Danby, Caroline, and Dryden, have been working with NYSEG to get the easement that NYSEG owns, and then that will end up connecting through down to the Tioga County line, which connects in with the Finger Lakes Trail. So that's going to be a great asset once they get moving on that easement. So like I said, there's about 25 actions that are documented in here to make these continuations happen and complete that version of the plan. And there's always more, like what's the next, but we really looking at those areas. So right now, I'm sharing this with you as a draft. The Parks and Trails Network has been reviewing it as well. I gave them a deadline last week to get their comments in, and we just had some editorial changes, nothing significant from the draft that you're seeing here. So depending on the kinds of questions you guys have, we'll bring a resolution to you at a future meeting that then will to go to the legislature to accept the strategy, and that's what the verb that was used in 2014 was accepting the strategy. So I will take any questions.
Randy?
Thanks, Darby. I have to say my grandmother, Laura McGuire, was very involved in the Finger Lakes Trails and maintained many miles of it, and was and actually taught a lot of classes on things like that. Connecticut Hill. So there are a lot of people are using the seasonal roads up there that aren't plowed for cross-country skiing and horseback riding. And they actually, there's spots up there where you can see where they come and they just drop trailers, and all these people get out and start riding horses. So I want to share that information with you if you're interested in that. So.
Great, thanks.
And the Black Diamond Trail, of course, because I'm out in Trumansburg, so I use that one more, and used it the other day to go down to Ithaca to have lunch with a friend and, ride my bicycle, my e-bike back. And I just wanted to say, I know I haven't heard a lot here, but I just went to Albany, and I was talking to some relatives there, and they were like, well, you can't ride an e-bike on a regular trail that's for bikes. So I just want to put that out there. I believe it's a New York State. I don't know if I think it's codified that wherever you can ride a bike, you can ride an e-bike. I've never had anybody ask me here. I've had people look at my e-bike, and it's probably because it's a cool e-bike, but so it's really nice for someone like me with a bad knee to be able to to get out and to be able to go all the way down to Ithaca and enjoy, the fall, the leaves falling. It's a great time of year to get out on the trails, just to put that out there with all the leaves coming down. It's still some gorgeous trails, and there's still some leaves on the trees out there, so.
Watch for walnuts. It seemed like a heavy walnut year.
I was, my tires are a little bit fat, so I'm glad about that, because, there's a lot of walnuts this year. And squirrels are trying to get the walnuts. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, we got the next thing on for you, which is the Building Code Administration and Operations Study Update. I'm going to preface this with, 4 years ago or so, 3 or 4 years ago, through this committee, I believe it was, when Martha Robertson was chair, we had talked about some of the issues with the different building codes in the different municipalities and how that's a struggle, especially when we're wanting more affordable housing, for instance. It's very difficult for developers or builders to go from one municipality to another, and everything's kind of often different. And also with the aging population of building code officials. So we tasked our planning department to look at that, if there was some type of shared services or something, to see what the issues were, to further look into this. And so Darby, take it away.
Great.
And please add if I missed something.
That's a great introduction. And so in 2022, at the very end of last year, we went through an RFP process and hired LaBerge Group to facilitate and manage this study. So if I say the consultants, that's who I'm referring to. And we kicked off the beginning of the year forming a steering committee, and that includes county staff and then some municipal representatives from across the county. And sorry, Annie, you have heard this 3 times, so I'll try to keep it fresh for you, but the information doesn't change a whole lot. So it's a 4-task project that we're working on, and I presented some basic information to you guys in March, but I know that was a very long time ago, and I don't expect you to remember. But so task 1 is really just having the consultants gather information, talk to all the municipalities, the code enforcement officers, and then also the chief elected officials on what their status is with code enforcement, what their challenges are, what are issues, problems that they're facing. And then we also did a couple meetings that had community stakeholders involved. So there was one that included some developers and realtors and builders. And so we got them in a room and talked about some of those challenges. And then also had one, both Annie and Greg Mezey were there representing HED and Peak, and then some of the other boards were represented at that information gathering stage. So the consultants did a really great job making sure everyone provided input. There was no stone unturned in trying to pull this together. And then they came up with all these potential opportunities for shared services or consolidation, and generated a list. And now we're at the task 3 section, where we're taking some strategies and creating the details on it. And I've been reviewing a 40 or so page document so that's what I'll cover today, is those 6 prioritized strategies. So after that's complete, we'll have a draft report, some more outreach, and a final report close to the end of the year, if not early 2024. Still working out the timeline. I think reviewing this document has taken a little longer than we had hoped. So again, I'm going to go through 6 strategies, and I'll give the benefits of those strategies and why we're considering those. You might have heard in conversations in the past especially with TCOG, trying to streamline the process of assigning the addresses for new construction. And so right now, someone comes in for a building permit for a new house along a road, and it's either a code enforcement officer or a clerk either uses a program that the county has offered or doesn't use that program, and they assign a house number that comes to our GIS division, and they say, well, that house doesn't work, or it does, and they have some back and forth. And so really here, we're trying to focus on the public safety, eliminating that duplication. So the idea for this one is to use our GIS tools and have it go, well, there's some information that's going to have to come from the municipality and then go to both DOER and GIS, and that, like, so DOER would, Department of Emergency Response would be the addressing authority, but GIS will do the technical side of it, and then work with the towns they send out the information to the post offices and other folks. So it's really just streamlining a process that has kind of been going on, but doesn't have a formal division of labor. So we're looking to get an agreement in place to move that effort forward. The second strategy is on the building permit software. So some municipalities, actually 3 municipalities recently started working with OpenGov, towns of Ithaca and Lansing and the city of Ithaca, but it's really expensive. It's a very nifty program, but it's tens of thousands of dollars, and that's too much for Enfield, too much for Newfield, too much for Ulysses, who just use a spreadsheet or a Word document to track their permit. So the benefits of some different software systems would be having some more automation in their workflow and communicating with developers. There would be standardization across municipalities that would increase efficiency and, again, the communication side of things. So we're going to start off with doing some demonstrations for the municipalities. There are a couple of vendors that our consultants have already been in touch with who are itching to get the word out about their products. So we'll do those demos, and depending on, I think there are some clear ideas of direction people want to move, but we'll do a request for proposals, look at those, and work on implementing. So the idea would be that besides those 3 municipalities I mentioned that use OpenGov, but if we could get the rest of them to be interested in one vendor and one product, there could be some benefits in cost sharing. It's like a package as opposed to each municipality trying to figure this out on their own. The third strategy relates to trying to fill positions when there are vacancies. And I think we really saw with, in the last couple of years, well, I use the example that C.J. Randall said in a meeting the other night that the average age of a code enforcement officer is retired. So we have gotten some new folks trained up and learning this, but there's a lot of training involved. And so we want to be able to support the succession planning. I mean, this is really something that came out, in the early days of how do we fill these positions immediately or have backup, and just make sure there's compliance with all the work that the code officers have to do on an annual basis. And so there's multiple initiatives within this strategy. I won't cover them all, but there's work on a recruitment toolkit. If you go and look at the job titles for each code enforcement officer across all the municipalities, they're slightly different. They have different specs, qualifications. So trying to streamline even that would be a benefit, so that if someone's Town of Ulysses code officer, and there's a vacancy in another municipality, they already have that basic approval to have that job. So how can things move across municipalities?
What does CEOs mean?
Code enforcement officer.
Code enforcement officer. Okay.
That's a long thing to write out a million times in some of these reports.
Thinking something else, but yeah.
Or chief, was a problem. We also use chief elected officers, and then of course there's, the other CEOs that we don't use here. So there's, like I said, a number of ideas here, working with community college. What are some incentive programs that we even see, like I think the fire departments use to have training in advance for the code enforcement officers to join this career path. The fourth strategy is on court, just the court presentment and prosecution. Unfortunately, this is is something that happens that we can't bring everyone into compliance, so trying to deal with that non-compliance, but taking folks to court is very time intensive. And the idea behind this one is to increase that speed and competency of the way we take violations to court. And so the one main approach is just identifying attorneys in the community or in the area that would could be targeted by any of the municipalities to work on this. I mean, many of us know Guy Crow works for about 6 municipalities in the county, and if he was not available, or there are others, so we want to try to make it easier for the municipalities to have someone on the phone if they need to. And then there's also some training that would be part of this strategy. The fifth strategy also has a number of initiatives behind it, but this is kind of a real target, I think, in the early days of how do we increase the energy code compliance and just the information that we have coming out of that, and streamlining reviews, and all in an effort to increase efficiency and the time it takes for a developer to get a project approved. So I'm not gonna, this is a lot, but there's some mentorship that kind of already happens, but how do we formalize that when there's new staff? Having technical assistance on call, again, kind of like a third-party reviewer for energy code or large commercial. Have some trainings. I know our department's already offering one later this month on air source heat pumps. And then another holdup is that there are so few electrical and plumbing inspectors. I think only the city of Ithaca and the town of Ithaca have their own staff who can do these inspections. So how do we, work with those third-party vendors to have more people available to expedite the approval processes? And then the sixth strategy is just municipal to municipal shared services. There are a number of examples throughout the community. Town of Dryden and Village of Dryden share code enforcement. There was a setup in the past with Village of Trumansburg and Town of Ulysses sharing one person, but the benefits to having some more formal things written out, and we have some examples of intermunicipal agreements, is to again, plan for that succession and what happens when there are gaps. Someone wants to take a vacation, someone gets injured. How do we provide backup for different municipalities? And this is just a quick table from the document that we're working on that shows like which municipalities are interested in sharing what kinds of positions. And so we'll be honing in on, how do we make those shared services more effective and efficient for the municipalities. So to wrap this up, again, we're in this reviewing all those strategies. I mean, they do, there's some details that we're trying to figure out what makes the most sense and getting them facilitated and move forward after this study is complete. And so I've done presentations to the Planning Advisory Board, the Climate and Sustainable Energy Board, and to this group. So once we wrap up the document, we'll be bringing a draft report back in the coming months.
Okay. Thank you, Darby.
Thanks.
Any questions, comments? Randy?
That was a lot, and I probably forgot half of what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Have you looked at the standardizing of fees that are charged for building permits?
Yeah, there's yet another little area where we have kind of like initiatives that don't need to be part of the study, but formalize, or the even the building permit application and the fees. I think that would come out of that software piece of it. Really like working with the vendor then to be like, oh, what do you see across these municipalities? If we all kind of join on board. And municipalities have different reasons for the fees that they charge, so that it will be hard to be completely, unified across the community. But maybe, like solar projects or additions, how do we get that standardized would be great.
It seems like they need revenue to do some of these things.
Right.
And it looks like they're leaving some funds on the table to me, so I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Well, thank you for doing this. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to stay for the next presentation if you'd like, or, okay. So I want to ask, Norman, first, did you have any updates for us from administration?
Be very simple, no.
Great.
Have any updates?
Just fits in with our schedule here. Okay. And let's see, and so member reports, we'll save that to the end if there is anything real quick. And so last major thing on our agenda is I'll let you folks introduce yourself. We're going to be talking about bird-friendly buildings. Going to run over to my desk for a second.
Start the presentation. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes. Yep. And they have more books. So I passed out a couple of books for bird-friendly building design. And from the person that wrote the book and did the research. And
Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Vinson. I represent the Cornell Bird-Friendly Campus Initiative. I'm joined by Dr. Chris Shepard, who is one of the foremost experts on the issue, which I am here to speak with you about today, which is bird-friendly building design. So who are we at the Bird-Friendly Campus Initiative? We're a collaboration between the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and the American Bird Conservancy, which are two organizations that have decades of experience in ornithology and bird conservation research. But we're also a collaboration of students, Cornell faculty, and experts on the issues who are seeking to make Ithaca and Cornell's campus more bird-friendly. So we were started in reaction to a very troubling study that was taken in 2019 by the Lab of Ornithology, which found that the U.S. and Canada's bird population had decreased by 3 billion since 1970, which is 1 in 3, approximately. More troubling is that this wasn't limited to just specific species or a specific habitat or a specific group of birds. It was a universal experience. It was a very broad issue. So clearly humans were having a lot of different effects on birds. And if we really want to understand this decline, we should look at the different natural processes that birds undertake yearly and how humans inhibit them. So a big one that everyone knows about is migration. And most people know the basic facts, so that it occurs twice a year in spring and fall. Birds fly south for the winter, they fly north for the summer. But most people don't know that migration is primarily a nocturnal event. So the actual flying takes place at night, and the birds then stop at different locations and refuel during the day. And the way that we're able to actually monitor migration is through weather radar. So this map right here was taken from a weather radar station in Ohio, and it just shows the moment right after the sun sets and the birds start to lift up into the air in the hundreds of thousands and continue their migration south. And we also know that birds tend to follow paths when they migrate. So the United States has been broken up into certain flyways, and Ithaca is located on the Atlantic or Eastern Flyway. The name depends on the source that you use. This is just a map that was taken of the entire U.S. You can even see as the sun sets, the birds start to lift up in the millions. This was taken, I believe, at the peak of fall migration a couple of years ago, and that's literally hundreds of millions of individual birds just visible on the map. So the main issue that we find that birds face during migration is window strikes, or bird strikes, when birds collide with windows. So how does this occur, and how do we prevent this? So the first thing we should look at is the exact numbers, and they're really hard to calculate. The Smithsonian a couple years ago, in 2014, tried to estimate how many birds were killed in that single year alone due to windows. And they got the rough estimate of 330 million to 998 million. However, the study was conducted using citizen science monitors who have been known to undercount. On top of that, since that study was conducted 10 years ago, or almost 10 years ago, the number of large glass buildings have only increased, and so current estimates predict that the number of casualties is over 1 billion per year. It's important to note that this is not a high-rise issue. That's sort of the main stereotype, but a lot of the collisions, in fact, currently most of them occur with mid-rise and low-rise buildings. Now, this is mainly due to the fact that there's a lot more of those, but even then, just any sort of reflective surface can be dangerous to birds. There was a pretty big incident a couple weeks ago in Chicago at the McCormick Conference Center, which is a low-rise building that killed just 1,000 birds in one day, which is just a very insane number. But low-rise and mid-rise are very much large threats, so if we're going to try and find a solution, it has to cover them as well. And another way I think about the scope of this issue is a little bit of an exercise. So if anyone's interested, what is this an image of? It's a tree, yeah. And that's correct. It is an image of a tree, but if we zoom out, it's a reflection of a tree. Without the context that it's a reflection in a window, without the mullions that surround it, we don't know that it's a reflection. And the reason why we even know is because we see those. It's the context that we've learned to understand that this is a window. Birds haven't learned this context. They never really will. What they see is just a tree and some weird lines that just kind of are in the way that they can just fly around to avoid. So if we want to solve this issue, we need to get rid of the reflections that make them consider the building an extension of their habitat, or we need to break up the space enough so that it seems unappealing for them to fly towards the building. So again, eliminate reflective surfaces and break up reflective spaces. That's how we solve this issue. But what does that actually look like? So the first thing that we do, we can use bird-friendly materials to reduce reflections. And what on earth is a bird-friendly material? So we have a test to determine that. Essentially, bird-friendly materials, any material that we find is better than glass and meets a certain standard where the birds won't collide with it, or at least will collide with it at a rate that's much less than just your regular pane of glass. So we have this thing called the tunnel test. It is quite literally a giant tunnel with two panes of material at the end of it, one piece of regular glass, one piece of the material being tested. Kind of looks like this from the inside. If you're a bird, there is a thin little mist net in the front, so no birds are hurt when they fly towards the end. The birds are caught, mostly wild birds on migration. We put them in the tunnel, they fly towards the end, and then we test which direction they flew. And we use that to develop this thing called the threat factor score system. We have the threat factor being from 100 to 0, with 100 being dangerous material for birds, 0 meaning safe, and we use that to create different legislation and codes. So a lot of codes that have been written mandate that buildings have a reflective material of like 30 or below, which covers a wide range of different types of glass, as a matter of fact. The American Bird Conservancy on their website has a whole database of literally hundreds upon hundreds of different materials that have been tested. This project has been going on for many years, and there have been literally thousands of tests. The other thing we can do is break up the reflective spaces. So we have this rule called the 2x2 rule, which is just that everything, if you're going to break up a space, must be 2 inches apart. So if you're going to do lines, they must be 2 inches apart either direction. If you're going to do dots or a different pattern, they have to be broken up by 2 inches. You can also use irregular patterns to break up the space, but of course those patterns must be at most 2 inches apart. That's sort of the distance that will stop even the smallest of birds from going through. It's also important to note that these things aren't necessarily very visible. Birds see differently than how we do. They have better vision, as a matter of fact. They can see more spectrums of light. So a lot of times UV patterns are used to break up the space quite effectively. And here are just some examples of some buildings that have recently incorporated bird-friendly design. On the left, we have Stocking Hall at Cornell University. They recently underwent some renovations on part of the building and added in these sort of lines on the windows. And I believe since then there haven't been any recorded collisions. On the left, we have the Intuit headquarters. Those are the people behind TurboTax. And below it, we have the Statue of Liberty Museum, both of which incorporated fritted glass, which is basically they carve into the glass a little pattern. It's very subtle. You can't even see it in the photos. It's basically not visible, and it's, like I said, very little change to what the current building design would be, but since then they've had very few collisions. So why are we speaking with you today? What can you do to help this problem? The first would be some form of county-wide legislation. There's precedent for this. There have been several counties across the United States that have incorporated bird-friendly design laws, and basically what their ruling was is that if a building receives funds from us, that's specifically a construction project, it must meet a bird-friendly standard. They sometimes write their own standards. They sometimes borrow one from LEED. The LEED credit system has their own bird-friendly credit, and sometimes people just borrow from it and say that you must meet the standards of the credit in order to get funding. This has not just been done on a county level. New York City, Washington, D.C., and Minneapolis, Minnesota have both, all three of them have incorporated bird-friendly design laws, and so has the state of Maine and the state of Maryland. Those last two have done state funding laws where if a building receives a certain amount of state funds, it must meet the criteria. The other thing you can do is just include bird-friendly design in your future construction plans. I know that there is a new administrative building that's being built in the future, and that would be really nice if we could have bird-friendly design incorporated into it. These two plans are not mutually exclusive, so we can do both. It should be important to note that bird-friendly design is just kind of the way that architecture is heading. There have been a lot of bird-friendly buildings that have been built all around Ithaca recently. Cornell has adopted the bird-friendly standard for all of its new construction projects. The new building by Holt Designs, the Cayuga Medical Building, that also is bird-friendly. We didn't even have anything to do with that. They just kind of did that on their own. This is just sort of the direction that a lot of architects are going, and it might as well make sense to get ahead of that and just sort of go into this now, because what we're asking for is nothing radical. It's been done literally dozens of times at this point, and to a very minimal effect on anything other than window collisions. It's been very successful at decreasing those. So thank you so much for listening and giving us your time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I've also left my email at the bottom of the slide, so you can reach out if you have any others. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Did you introduce who else is here with you today?
This is Dr. Chris Shepard.
Can you speak into the mic again?
This is Dr. Chris Shepard. She's one of the leading experts on window collisions in the United States.
I'm from the American Bird Conservancy.
Yeah.
With the American Bird Conservancy. Okay. So I'll open it up for questions. I don't know if I spoke with, I'll start off by, I spoke briefly with Terry Carroll at our planning department the other day, and looking to see if this could fit in to some type of policy that we have for buildings that the county would be constructing. And there's a possibility, he's working on our green building policy. Is Terry on the Zoom? He's not, so he couldn't join us today, but he was very interested in this and figuring out how to see if we could incorporate this in our new green building policy that's being written up presently.
That would be great. I'd love to chat with him if possible.
Not a green building.
Can you speak to your mic?
It's not a green building if it kills birds.
Right. So we thought that was a good fit for that. And we have a facilities and infrastructure committee, and so I spoke to the chair of that, Mike Lane, and told him that we're going to have our presentation today. And so luckily, because of Zoom and recordings, even though folks from that committee couldn't be here today, I'll remind them again, encourage them to look at this so that they can consider that as we're looking at a redesign of our renovating or adding a new public safety building and a center of government or any other major renovation we're having. Any questions from the group? Comments? Randy?
I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. It's always good to learn something new. The county is planning to build a new building here in the next few years, so we'll take that into consideration. Appreciate it. Yep.
Veronica?
Yeah, thank you again for coming, and good, clear presentation. I like the migration animation. And I know I got to hear from you all the other day already. Forgive me if this was mentioned, but I think you had said at that time that bird friendliness of buildings is generally highly overlapping with energy efficiency. Like, these aren't contradictory, but they go together. I guess, can you comment on that, since we brought up the green building code or green building policy? Yeah.
Well, there's sort of multiple different ways to looking at it. So a lot of bird-friendly design elements include elements of sort of shading. So bug screens, for example. Another thing that would be considered bird-friendly is if you've seen Gates Hall, not the lower half of it, but the upper half, the more unique feature of the building, those sort of metal panels that impact the lighting and save energy for the building. That is a bird-friendly design. It blocks off some access to the windows. It breaks up the space. So they're sort of intrinsically connected. I know you might have something else to say on that.
There are a number of varieties of fritted glass, which are essentially glass that incorporates a sunshade. So there's a lot of overlap between controlling of heat, light, and glare, and things that are bird-friendly.
So some of those wouldn't add cost, some would, but some wouldn't too, because they'd already be incorporated.
Exactly.
And I saw you connected with Kate Darfler from our Environmental Management Council. So I'm hoping through her you can maybe talk to that group, and because there's in almost every, if not every municipality, the smaller municipalities throughout the county, there's conservation groups, or sometimes they're called something a little different, that are in each municipality, and they have access, to make recommendations to their municipalities. So is that something you think might?
We'll talk to all of them.
Yeah, and then, of course, the big one, Ithaca, the city of Ithaca. I'm not sure. So you mentioned about there's some counties that make an overall law. I'm not sure if that's, because we don't have building use. I'm not even sure if that's, but you said some counties across the country, or any in New York State?
Not in New York State. Lake County in Illinois, and there's a county in Maryland.
There's a few others as well.
There's a couple of other ones. Yeah.
California.
So I'm wondering if they have more land use where we don't.
We can get the details for you.
Okay. But is this something? I mean, I was when I talked to Carol. I mean, I was hoping this is something that could be added into the green building policy. Are other legislators feeling similar? Okay, I see some nods. Everybody nodding. Okay, so we'll give the go-ahead for Terry to work on that. And anything else that? So you mentioned two different ways of the design of the building. Well, I guess there's three different ways of initial design of the building. And then at least two different things you could do to the glass. Was one of them a film that you could apply to the glass later?
Yes.
Okay. And that would go on the outside or inside?
On the outside.
On the outside. And is that
actually quite a lot you can do with existing glass by putting something on the outside?
And is some of that available? Like, can you get that for residential?
Yes.
Yes.
So you could add it to windows. Okay.
Residential external insect screens, good for security. People can't see in and decide there's something they want.
Okay. Any questions from planning department or anybody? Well, thank you very much for coming to us today. And
thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you have their contact info? Okay. All right, thank you very much. And thank you for the books. We appreciate that. Okay. I think if you want to just leave one or two more, we wouldn't mind, because we have some people that aren't here, and we could pass them on to our facilities folks. Okay, thank you, Norma. So committee member reports. I know all three of us went to the Food System Summit, but some of us spoke about that at the legislature meeting. So anything else? Are we all set? Okay. Then we're adjourned for today. I think we got everything. Thank you very much, everybody. What's that?
Gavel wrap.
Yeah, it's a quiet one.
Yeah.
It's very quiet.